Oh, that joy you feel, it's palpable because it's Friday, and this is Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we are going to get you ready for a wild weekend. We're going to preview the NFL. We're going to preview college football. Hell, we're going to preview boxing. Like, there is nothing that we're not going to get into, including last night's epic and huge statement win in Thursday Night Football. But Caroline Fenton, my friend, we will start the show like we start every single show. Before we get to any of that, let's start with 3 points. What is on your mind?
Yeah, it's shocking that I woke up refreshed this morning after having nightmares of the Green Bay Packers and how scary they look. We will get into that. But do want to start with an AFC divisional matchup that we have coming up this weekend. The Browns and the Ravens. And there has been some chatter happening going into this game. Of course, two teams that suffered just absolutely heartbreaking losses in week one. But I think we view the Browns and the Ravens kind of on two different fields, at least right now. But the Browns have been doing some talking. First and foremost, Grant Delpit, safety for the Cleveland Browns, was asked how hard it is to tackle Derrick Henry. We all know Derrick Henry, right? Like, he's not even a human. He is such a perfectly, well-designed athlete. And Grant Delpit said, not hard to tackle Derrick Henry. Tell me you haven't tried tackling Derrick Henry before. But Derrick Henry responded and said, we'll see on Sunday. But that didn't end there. It wasn't just Grant Delpit that was doing some talking. It was also Browns wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, who was asked, what kind of a challenge does the Ravens secondary present? We have Marlon Humphreys and you have Kyle Hamilton, who I think could potentially be a defensive player of the year candidate. And he said, no challenge that Ravens secondary presents. And Kyle Hamilton was asked about it. He said, was I not going to play hard before he said that? Bulletin board material. He didn't really understand what was coming out from the Cleveland Browns. Fitzy, I have a rule of thumb over here is that if I talk the talk, I have to be able to walk the walk. You cannot talk the talk if you don't walk the walk. The Browns are going to have, just mush on their face if they cannot walk the walk after they've been talking as much as they've been talking. I always believe you keep the bulletin board material at a minimum, if none at all. Let your play on the field do the talking. So I have to believe that the Ravens are not just fueled after that devastating loss to the Buffalo Bills in week one, but fueled by the conversation that's going on in the Cleveland Browns locker room.
A friend of mine in media many years ago told me you never get in trouble for what you don't say. There's some truth here. And look, I get it. I'll just remind, in my younger days, Caroline Fenton, there was a period where I might have been on Lower Broadway with the former Tennessee Titan that now is a media guy. You can figure it out. And he was with me, and I might have been running my mouth towards some people that were much larger than me, and I would have got my ass kicked, were it not for the fact that I had some large humans around me. And he looked at me and said, hey, man, just because you got a mouth doesn't mean you got to use it. There's just some life advice here for the Browns, because I think we said yesterday could be a trap game. Not anymore. No, I mean, you just made sure that there's no trap happening now, and the Bears going to trap you instead. So let's see how that works out for the Browns over the course of the weekend. Let's keep points going before we get to Thursday Night Football on other matchups, because I got my eye on this little matchup known as the Bengals and the Jags. Now, look, if you go back and look at some of the advanced analytics, you'll find some interesting things here about this matchup. Joe Burrow, by the way, 2-0 against Trevor Lawrence. One of those was a national championship game that Caroline Fenton and I were both standing on the sidelines for. It's a moment of pure joy I will never forget from Caroline Fenton. It's a beautiful thing. All right, but 2-0 in this matchup, there is still so much pressure on the Bengals to figure things out. Let's just be honest here, because last time I checked, Travis Hunter feasted in the slot in week one. Well, the Bengals particularly got eaten alive in the slot in week one. So Trevor Lawrence is going to have the chance to just heave the ball over and over and over to Travis Hunter, who we knew was going to be a dynamic wide receiver from week one. We knew he was going to be dynamic on both sides of the ball eventually, we hope. Let's see how that works. But for the Bengals, they didn't look great in week one. They didn't look great against the Browns that we were just talking about. They don't just need a win. I think they need a little bit of an eye test moment here. Yes, my God, in September, if the Bengals get a win, it feels like they're above the mean. Like, we all expect the Bengals to lose September football games. But frankly, this is a team that's supposed to be a Super Bowl contender, at least in their minds. Need to see more growth from that offense. It looked out of whack. The whole reason we saw Joe Burrow getting hit in the preseason, because it was going to make that offense better. They need to be good from week one. And also, not for nothing, flip side of this is Liam Cohen has a chance to have Duval out there right out of the gates against a huge contender in the AFC. It's a big moment for the Jags. We'll see how this game plays out, but how Travis Hunter plays is going to be a big factor for fantasy football fans. How Joe Burrow plays is what all of us are going to be wondering going into the season. Let's get to our top play or our top point of the game, though, Caroline Fenton, and it comes in the form of Thursday Night Football dominance. And I cannot stress this enough. If you woke up this morning and you saw the score of the Thursday Night Football matchup, it didn't do justice to it. The Commanders got their asses kicked last night by the Green Bay Packers. This was a game that at one point was 27-10, and even then it felt like it could have been worse. The Packers came out and, to me, looked like the most dominant team in the NFC. They looked like the most dominant team in the NFL. Right now, I'm not sure there is a better team on both sides of the ball because we saw Jordan Love take his shots downfield. We saw Jordan Love in this offense working, even though they were shorthanded for much of the game at the wide receiver position. But even more importantly than that, to me, Caroline, we saw that defense just absolutely crush the Commanders. The Commanders looked like a bad football team taking on a Packers defense that was there for it.
Yeah, I mean, final score 27-18, but there were times where it felt like it was 47-8. Like that final score is not indicative of how dominant the Packers were. It was like kind of a garbage time touchdown from the Commanders at the end. But it is fascinating to me, Fitz. Look, the Packers over the last couple of years haven't had a bad defense, but it wasn't a defense that I felt like I could wake up on any Monday after a Packers game on Sunday and say, man, that is a nasty unit. But what we saw last night and what we saw week 1 against the Detroit Lions, nasty. That defense was swarming around everywhere. It was up front. I mean, Jayden Daniels was under duress all game long. That was the kind of debilitating kind of, take the wind out of your sails kind of performance that I don't think that we have seen from the Washington Commanders since Jayden Daniels got into Washington. Jayden Daniels couldn't do anything, and that is a guy that has scramble ability and ability to extend plays probably better than a majority of quarterbacks in the NFL. It's like Lamar Jackson, it's Josh Allen, and it's Jayden Daniels. Just their kind of mobility and their ability to make something out of nothing. I mean, Jayden Daniels got sacked 4 times last night. Micah Parsons, even if it didn't pop off the page, I believe I don't have the box score in front of me, but I believe he notched a half a sack last night. Again, if we're going to go back to box score scouting, that doesn't do his performance last night justice. Micah Parsons was everywhere. He was constantly making things difficult for Jayden Daniels. And even in the secondary as well, Fitz, we look at Keyshawn Nixon, who I think is not a household name in the slightest unless you're a Green Bay Packers fan. And you think that Packers fans have been incredibly frustrated with the secondary and with the production of Keyshawn Nixon, over his tenure in Green Bay. He had 5 pass breakups last night. 5 pass breakups. I mean, they couldn't get the run game going. They couldn't get the pass game going. That Washington Commanders offense couldn't do anything. There was one point in the game, Fitzy, where Tucker Kraft, which hot new bombshell, has entered the villa. Where did he come from? There was a point in the game last night where Tucker Kraft himself had more yards than the Washington Commanders did as an entire team. That is all that you need to know about the full and complete performance that we saw from the Green Bay Packers.
Keyshawn Nixon, the 5 passes defended last night. No corner in the NFL had 5 passes defended in a single game last season. So that shows you how good that is. And you mentioned the stat sheet on Micah Parsons. The most important stat, if you guys want to go into a little bit more than just sacks, that I think is important, Micah Parsons was credited with 8 quarterback hurries last night, including 6 in the second half. 8. When you start talking about 8 times that you I know we're going to make this about the Cowboys constantly, but this isn't about the Cowboys. This is about the fact that through and through, the Packers defense now with Micah Parsons, it was already pretty good. Now with Micah Parsons, it just looks like nobody knows what the hell to do. And that includes the Commanders. I'm left to wonder, this is what happens in week 2, right? Week 2 gives us a little bit more work, right? Gives it a little bit more body of evidence, and we can make more decisions from that. We decided that the Lions just looked like they are a work in progress with new coordinators on both sides of the ball. What if the Lions just happen to take on the most dominant team in the NFL? After 1 week, now one and a half weeks, if you want to call it that, that to me looks like the Green Bay Packers. I think maybe we need to start couching our conversation a little bit based on what we saw week 1, because if we're being honest, the Packers took on a Lions team that's really good on, or I should say the Lions, they beat the Lions, who we expect to be really good on both sides of the ball. The Commanders beat a Giants team that might just turn out to suck. So what we saw last night, was just sheer and utter domination from two, we think, playoff caliber football teams. But if anything, I think it cemented two narratives. It cemented the narratives that maybe the Commanders have some work to do and they're not going to necessarily pick right up where they left off. And maybe the Packers are just that damn good. I'll give you one other important thing, Caroline, and that to me is Jordan Love. And I'll credit Kirk Herbstreit said this at the end of the broadcast last night. After the broadcast, he was talking about the game. A wild number to me. Jordan Love this year has 4 incompletions all season when he's not pressured. So what does that tell us? That tells us that pre-snap, if you're not getting after Jordan Love, pre-snap, he's seeing it, he's dissecting it, and he's beating it. That tells you that Matt LaFleur has done a beautiful job as a coach, really getting his quarterback prepared. That offense is doing a great job getting their quarterback prepared. And it tells you that Jordan Love is playing with confidence. He's playing with decision-making that is just absolutely beating defenses. The quick film on Jordan Love is going to tell everybody, if you do not start to mix up what you are doing pre-snap, if you cannot disguise your coverages, you're going to get sliced and diced by now the second time this year I'm saying this, a surgical passer. Jordan Love, even though he was without his, I would say his primary wide receiver, Jayden Reed broke his collarbone out 6 to 8 weeks, right? They lose Jayden Reed early in this game. Doesn't matter. I mean, they are the true epitome of next man up, and they're absolutely hard to stop if Jordan Love continues to play with this level of efficiency.
100%. And I think we've all been kind of waiting. Would Jordan Love take that next step forward? Because Jordan Love has never been by any means a liability for this team, but Jordan Love has not made that next step, at least prior to this season, hasn't made that next step to be, okay, this is a guy that you can trust, that if none else is working, he can put the team on his shoulders. I think it takes a special kind of quarterback to do that. And I don't know if he's officially graduated into that tier, but at least in what we've seen through 2 weeks, it makes me feel incredibly optimistic that he can kind of make that leap. And I think also not just with his arm, but what he can do with his legs as well. But we saw more willingness for Jordan Love to carry the rock himself, especially in 3rd and short situations. And let's not forget that Jordan Love truck in the first quarter didn't even lower his shoulder, just went mano on the sideline. Like, if you are a general manager or a coach or a Green Bay Packer fan, you're like, Jordan, don't do that, please. We have 15 games left on the schedule and we need you to make a run in the playoffs. But it was kind of awesome to watch, watching at home. So yes, I think that we're seeing Jordan Love just continue to make those next steps forward, and his ability to kind of just tear up and slice and dice apart a Dan Quinn-led defense that I think we were just talking a couple days ago about how it might be kind of an underrated unit over there in Washington. But if it was Dan Quinn, a defensive guy, versus Matt LaFleur, an offensive guy, I mean, Matt LaFleur won that battle handedly. And it begs the question, too, to me, Fitzy. Yeah, go ahead if you have thought on that.
No, go.
It begs the question to me, Jordan Love looking how he's looked in 2 weeks. And, this receiving unit, obviously, like you mentioned, Reed goes down with that collarbone injury, but the defense, how they look. Josh Jacobs, obviously, how he looked. I know that the Green Bay Packers do not have the same amount of star power as the Philadelphia Eagles. Josh Jacobs is not Saquon Barkley, and they don't have an A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith in the receiving core. But if you take the star power out of it and the name recognition away from it, are the Green Bay Packers and their production and their dominance and what we've seen in 2 performances so far, are they a Philadelphia Eagles-esque kind of complete team?
I think that's the reason, yes, because complementary football. Like the stupid thing we hear cliched said by coaches all the time. The Packers are built in a complementary football way. And to your point, I think one of the most interesting things that's going to happen over the course of the season, let me be clear, we stat chase. So that means guys that put up huge numbers are always what we talk about for MVP. I mean, we're 2 weeks in. You can't tell me that Jordan Love isn't capable of winning an MVP if he keeps playing at this level. I mean, I know that we look at some of the video game numbers and we want to chase video game numbers. And if you look at Jordan Love's stats over the first couple of games, 188 yards in the first game, 292 in the second. Those don't necessarily feel like those video game numbers that we love. But when you start talking about just brands and teams and the way they're built and how they're going to win, if the Packers offense is going to continue to do what it's done over 2 games, it's going to have to get efficient and great play from Jordan Love combined with efficient and great play and the best running they can get every single opportunity, right? So there is this moment from Josh Jacobs. So there's this moment for me where I'm looking at the Packers saying, yes, I think they're built in the same complementary fashion that the Eagles are built. I think if we took the logos off the helmets and we just thought about what we've seen so far this season, they have the two most impressive. Obviously, they're only team with 2 games, but they have 2 incredibly impressive wins. If you had told us 2 months ago that the Packers would come out and just kick the snot out of the Commanders and the Lions the first 2 weeks of the season, I think it's undeniable that to me, the Packers are the Super Bowl favorite right now. I think they're the best team in the NFC. I think they're the best complementary football team in the entire league. And I think Jordan Love, if he keeps playing this way, is going to have a real shot at an MVP season.
I don't know how you could disagree. I mean, it has just been belt to butt for 2 weeks against 2 teams that made playoff runs last year. So I don't know how you could disagree in the slightest. And I also do wonder how Lions fans feel waking up this morning. That obviously after you got your butt whooped last week, you felt really down. You thought, okay, maybe it was Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. You start to think, oh no, we suck again. I can understand how, Lions fans maybe felt last week of, are we really going to take that step back that everybody feared that we were going to? Today, do you feel a little bit different? Perhaps, do you feel a little bit different about your football team seeing yet another quality quarterback and quality football team get beat the way that they did, just like you got beat the way that you did against the Green Bay Packers?
I think that's the beauty of week 2. Now, not everything was beautiful from last night. There's some substantial injury news that we want to get into. Number one, as we just mentioned, we get a massive injury for the Packers. Jayden Reed, broken collarbone, out 6 to 8 weeks. So that's a projection at this point. Suffered a fractured collarbone. He will go to injured reserve. Again, this is just putting more on Jordan Love, but I want to make this a big deal, Caroline. I want this to be sort of the, oh my God, the sky is falling moment. But again, I just watched them last night without Jayden for the majority of the game, obviously, go out and just handle the Commanders' defense. So part of me thinks this is a huge deal. Part of me thinks that Matt LaFleur might be one of the better coaches in the league we don't talk enough about, because no matter who his wide receivers are, he seems to find a way for production no matter where it comes from.
I still think it is a big deal because, I don't know who Green Bay has next week, but they go into that matchup. Well, is Tucker Kraft going to be able to go off for over 100 receiving yards for the first time in his career, I might add? So congratulations to him. Is he going to be able to go off like he did last night? Because now you have a defense and coaches that are able and have the time to make adjustments to what we saw last night. So I still think it is a big deal, but I do think that your point is a very fair one, that, I brought up the Eagles, star quality and star power. Well, Matt LaFleur has proven that he might not need, 2 first-round receivers to recreate the kind of offensive magic that maybe we might see with the Eagles. Matt LaFleur doesn't do that. He is an expert of making lemonade out of lemons.
Over the course of this next 6 weeks, they get the Browns, the Cowboys in the matchup we'll all be watching, the Bengals, the Cardinals, the Steelers, the Panthers. There's some winnable football games there for them. It's got 100%. Vegas. I don't think the odds are going to shift drastically in Vegas in the way they perceive the Packers over the course of this, even though they are clearly better with Jayden Reed. That's not the only massive injury from this. Austin Eckler, friend of Yahoo Sports, obviously, and everybody loves Austin here and everywhere across the league, has a torn Achilles, it looks like. So he tore his Achilles. He's going to undergo imaging scheduled for Friday for confirmation of that. We don't know how complete the tear is. It's important to note Austin is somebody that, while he had tremendous success with the Chargers, went to the Commanders looking for a second opportunity. He's an important part of their team, but he is 30 years old at this point at the running back position. This is tough to come back from. We all talk about how it takes a couple of years if it's an Achilles. If it's a fully torn Achilles, this feels like this could be close to the end for a player that, frankly, again, we love here, and fantasy football players particularly. He's saved a lot of leagues for a lot of years, so there's a lot of love for Austin Eckler.
Yeah, it's one thing you just absolutely hate to see. You hate to see anyone go down. And last night was an incredibly physical, rough and tumble kind of football game. So you hate to see those injuries. I wish the best for Austin Eckler. And it begs the question, too, of what does this Commanders run game look like if Austin Eckler and when Austin Eckler is not part of it?
Now, the Commanders are going to be licking their wounds. We'll keep you updated on what we find out, obviously, as that breaks down. But we've got a ton of football to get into this weekend, including a big day coming from Malik. We'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Missy Elliott made the Super Bowl before the Lions, Jags, Browns, and Texans. Now that is obviously referencing her 2015 Super Bowl halftime appearance with Katy Perry. Super Bowl humble brag that I was at. I'm not gonna lie, I was there. I watched Katy Perry live in person. It was a meh halftime in the stadium. People loved it. People loved it on TV. It was a meh halftime.
I rebuke that. You're not allowed to say that
that's-
about Missy Elliott. Nope.
Well, no, Missy's spectacular. Missy's spectacular. Katie was kind of
Yes.
bad, but Missy.
Oh, Katy Perry, yeah. The left shark you thought was not spectacular?
Okay, in the stadium, you really couldn't see much of the left shark. You didn't really realize it was happening.
Fitz is like, it's so hard to enjoy things when you're at a Super Bowl.
Yeah, you know what?
Everyone watching at home had a better experience than me in the stadium at the Super Bowl.
Can we acknowledge I went to several Super Bowls when I was in a band? Ever since I got into media, I've been around the Super Bowl, but I haven't actually gone to a Super Bowl game in media. How is it that touring in a country band, I got to go to the Super Bowl like 4 times? Working in this business, I never get to go to the game. All right, fine. Let's get
That's a subliminal message to all of our bosses that we would like to go to the game this year.
Yeah. Also, it's probably a statement of my professionalism that I never get a press pass. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Missy Elliott, but we're going to use Missy Elliott to get us into week 2 games. We are going to preview some week 2 football using Missy Elliott. Caroline Fenton, I will give you the floor as let's take a, why don't we pick this one? I'll pick Giants at Cowboys. Give me a Missy Elliott themed preview for Giants at Cowboys.
Yeah, we are going to, trademark our own term here on this show. We have several, but we'll add another one to the list. Missy Elliott games. I think the Giants at the Cowboys is a Missy Elliott game. Because after the Giants' week 1 performance, everyone said, oh, Russ is washed. Russ is awful. Russ is terrible. You're not totally wrong. But I think this week, he's going to put that thing down. He is going to flip it, and he is going to reverse it. Because Deron Bland is out for the Dallas Cowboys. He's going to put that thing down, flip it, and I'm going to end it there because there are trademark clause out there. He's going to put that thing down. He's going to flip it. He's going to reverse it because Deron Bland is out, the Cowboys' best corner. Malik Neighbors is going to absolutely feast. And in case you missed it, the Dallas Cowboys did, in fact, just trade their best pass rusher. And they struggled to do what, Fitz, week 1? Put pressure on the quarterback. So I think that with the injuries and no Micah Parsons, this Cowboys defense is still trying to figure some things out. I think that this is an opportunity for Russ to put that thing down, flip, and reverse the narrative that he has washed, because I think that he and Malik Neighbors, that connection, Malik Neighbors also, kind of taking a lot of, accountability for his actions in week 1 this past week. I think this week is going to be a bounce back for this Giants passing game.
Sure. You're right. It's going to be a big second half for Malik when he's being thrown the ball by Jackson Dart. Russ gets benched at halftime. This thing goes
by
so
Jackson
off the rails.
Dart.
That Jackson Dart. We start the Dart. Second half starts with the Dart. Russ is washed. This whole thing is going to fall apart. In the second half, the crowd just goes like absolutely like berserk, even in Dallas, trying to figure out what's going on because Jackson Dart gets on. And then Malik goes off because Jackson will take advantage of that. Look, I just need to manifest something exciting out of this game. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how one does put the thing down while also flipping it and reversing it, because that's a lot
Don't overthink it.
That's like a lot of hip stuff. I just don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. It's.
Don't overthink it. Just let it happen. Let the spirit of Missy Elliott run within you. And just put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it. Just do it. Just let your body do it.
Also, every person that ever sings that at a karaoke bar, I just want to I want to know what you sing in the next line. Okay. I'm sorry I asked. I'm sorry, America. That's on me. Let's try Missy Elliott game. We'll make Bills at Jets a Missy Elliott game. What you got for me?
Buffalo's gonna get their freak on. Get your freak on. Get your freak on. Get your freak on. Buffalo is going to get their freak on against this Jets team. And yes, I know Justin Fields looked much better in week 1 than we all anticipated. And yes, the Jets put 30+ points up for the first time, and I don't even really know how long that was a game that the Jets probably could have won against the Steelers in week 1. But this Buffalo Bills team is feeling Allen themselves. After a fourth quarter comeback against the Ravens, the Bills are just better. Josh Allen is just better than Justin Fields, and that is probably the understatement of the century. So Buffalo's about to get their freak on, Fitzy.
Yeah, Buffalo by a zillion in this game. I like a zillion's probably a bit of an overstatement, but yeah, now all I want to do is see an end zone celebration involving Josh Allen with the song "Get Your Freak On." Like, I just want to see how that works. I would try and twerk for you, but I feel like it would just look like Tina from Bob's Burgers. Like, it wouldn't like there's a weirdness to it.
You can interpret it however you would like.
Interpret twerking or the song? I don't know.
Yeah.
I should. Okay.
Okay. A twerk can be anything that you really want it to be. But we also have Seahawks Steelers coming up this weekend. Seahawks needing a bounce back. Steelers trying to continue what they did in week 1. What's the Missy Elliott of it all here, Fitzy?
You tell me. Like, you're the one crushing the Missy Elliott example here. Like, this game has.
Thank you.
There's a lot of
This is my
consequence on
wheelhouse.
both sides. So, like, give me what you got. What's your Missy Elliott? What's your Missy Elliott freak on this one?
I do like to think that I live at the intersection of football and Missy Elliott. Like, that
Who
is
doesn't?
where you can find me. Right, exactly. And if you don't, then we probably won't get along that well. I think that this one, that we're all going to lose control. Make it lose control. We're all going to lose control if Aaron Rodgers goes off the way that he did against the New York Jets. Now, for me, I see it once. That's great. That's lovely. That's wonderful. I want to see it again. And I want to see Aaron Rodgers do it again. Can he look like the MVP Aaron Rodgers again in week 2, even when he doesn't have the revenge factor of going up against one of his former teams? But if he does look like he looked last week, of course, he threw for 4 touchdowns last week, didn't turn the ball over. If he does that again, we'll all lose our freaking minds collectively as a football society. And frankly, Fitz, I'm here for it. Like, how fun is this season going to be? How fun will the Steelers team be if Aaron Rodgers kind of resurrects what he was in Green Bay?
I would also think that your lose control example works perfectly for the other side of this, because if you are a Seattle Seahawks fan today, you have spent months in your mind building up Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's going to be fine. He's every bit as good as Geno. It wasn't about KOC. It wasn't about the Vikings. Sam's going to be fine. And you've spent over a year now waiting for this defense to become what everyone thought it could be. And I always go back to Ravens players talking about now Seahawks head coach Mike McDonald, not the Doobie brother, by the way, but Michael McDonald, the head coach. One thing that Ravens players said at the time is it took a minute to figure that defense out, and I think we have to remember that some defenses require more thought. It's funny because defensive coordinators so often. Everybody loves it when they make things complicated until suddenly the defense doesn't play well. Then the next guy comes in and simplifies, and they're like, oh, it's important, it's simple, until it doesn't work well. And then it's too simple. We need something complicated. Well, players have told you that Michael McDonald's defense requires a little bit of time. So this is year 2. I expect great things from the Steelers defensively because of that. If they get carved up by the Steelers, the overreaction from Seattle fans, I think, is sort of warranted in this situation, because as much as there's been change in Seattle, has it made you better? And this is the wild thing. Like, everybody talks about change for the sake of change. All right, well, there's been change for the sake of change. There's been a lot of change in Seattle because it was good enough to just get them good enough until they weren't good enough, right? And that's a frustrating spot to be in for NFL fans. But is it more frustrating now when you're sitting around and you, like, what if you don't have that guy? And it's way too early to know. But if Aaron Rodgers goes in and carves up the Steelers, you're right. A lot of the reaction will be about Aaron Rodgers. I would also like to take that time to react to the pocket of what happens for Seattle, because if the Seahawks look bad and Sam Darnold has another turnover that costs them the game, there are going to be some real questions being asked about their offseason acquisition of quarterback, their decision to let Geno walk, their head coach, and if he's the right guy. Like, we're not that far off from Seahawks fans asking a lot of questions, Caroline.
So we kind of have to figure out how hard he's got to work it this weekend.
Okay.
Is Mike McDonald in the hot seat?
No, he isn't. But I do think that in some markets he would be. Look, anytime when your calling card is one thing, you better be really damn good at that one thing. So that's always my argument. Like, he is a defensive-minded head coach that needs to come in and have a great defense. And this is why to full transparency, we've yelled this to some of the people that work on this show. Being a defensive coordinator, being a coordinator in general, is so different than being a head coach. I have no idea. We have no idea right now if he's a great head coach or if he's not a great head coach. We don't have enough body of work to really know.
Because exactly, we don't. And I am not putting him on the hot seat. Let me put that out there just for the record. I just do wonder what more we need to see, or what is the bare minimum for this Seattle Seahawks team, because I also think, Fitzy, maybe not necessarily in Seattle, but overall as a football society, I think there's some fair skepticism about the effectiveness of a defensive minded head coach, that we see the Andy Reids of the world, the Kyle Shanahans of the world, the Sean McVays of the world, KOC, Ben Johnson in Chicago. We'll see how he works out. That these offensive-minded head coaches are really fun and really sexy. And then we get the Dan Quinns and the Mike McDonalds. That can a defensive-minded head coach break through and have the same level of dominance that we've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs, or maybe that we've seen from the San Francisco 49ers when they're healthy? Can a defensive-minded head coach have that same level of success? I know Bill Belichick is a defensive-minded head coach, but, Brady.
They have to be able to pick an offensive coordinator. And so far, the Seahawks, we're not sure that they've really done that. All right, we'll keep breaking down all the action from the course of the weekend. Might even get, the Pope involved. Ben Johnson facing his old squad. We'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Peyton Manning wrote Pope Leo a letter asking him to join the Manning Cast show live. And I respect that. I respect that level of just, hey, you shoot or shoot. They take their shot. Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. A ton of teams could use a blessing from Pope Leo heading into week 2. So we figured we'd just look at this and say, look, we all know at this point, and much has been made about the fact that we have our first American Pope and that he is a Chicago sports fan, which to me is just one of the coolest things in the world. Like the thought that the Pope, one way or the other, is sitting here rooting for a baseball team or a football team is amazing to me. So we figure we'd take a look at it and figure out maybe what teams could use a blessing, and we'll start with the current Pope's favorite team, right? Like we all know that the Pope is a Bears fan. So Pope, by the way, that should be a superpower that helps your team get to the playoffs right away. But I figured let's take a look at the Bears lines. Do we think the Pope, by the way, should the Pope be a Bears fan or a Saints fan now that he is the Pope? Like it's one thing when you're waiting to become the Pope. Now you're the Pope. Do you have to change affiliations and become a Saints fan?
I mean, it sounds only right? But, what does that say about the Bears and the Chicago White Sox, the Pope's, Chicago baseball affiliation, that the holiest man in the world is a fan of your team and not even he can do anything for you? Might need to look at yourself in the mirror a little bit there, Chicago White Sox fan. But the Pope has to be a Saints fan, right? The former Pope was, I guess, sort of a Saints fan, maybe accidentally a Saints fan. You see right there. Pope Francis. Today we give thanks to our Lord for our new saints. And when he tweeted this was back in 2019, if you all remember it. Whenever you tweet Saints, like hashtag Saints, the Saints logo pops up. So Saints fans went crazy. Like, is this the quite literal blessing from the Pope that the Saints are headed to the Super Bowl? Narrator, they did not. So not even that. A tweet blessing from the Pope was enough to help the Saints that season. But if Pope Francis was, I guess, technically a Saints fan, tweeting at the Saints, then I think the Pope has to be a Saints fan.
No, I think the Pope, nothing changes the allegiance you grew up with. I love the Pope's out here suffering through Super Bowls just like the rest of us when he watches the Bears. So Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell, who needs the Pope's blessing more in this game?
They both need a prayer. They both need a blessing. Bless both of their hearts. But I'm going to go Ben Johnson here because I think that this is such a wonderful opportunity for Ben Johnson to say, okay, I have my big boy pants on now, that I can be a head coach in this league. Because Ben Johnson made some pretty brutal tactical mistakes this past week that I think proved and showed it's not always easy to make that leap and to graduate from being a coordinator to a head coach. Some people are just way better coordinators than they are head coaches. I think there's plenty of examples of that in the history of the NFL. I think Ben Johnson wants to prove to all of us, but especially his former team that he was the offensive coordinator of, that he got all this buzz from the offense that he orchestrated in Detroit, that he wants to prove to everyone that, hey, I can be a head coach in this league. I am more than just an offensive mastermind. I can also be a tactician as well. So I'm going to say that Ben Johnson needs a little bit of a newcomer blessing.
I agree with that in theory, but the thing of it is it's so early for Ben Johnson. And for being honest, Ben has a scapegoat. Like if things go drastically wrong in Chicago this year, I'm not sure Ben will actually get blamed. We all know that. Dan Campbell doesn't have that grace. Like Dan Campbell is up against it. And I keep going back to the Eagles and what we saw when they changed coordinators. Well, he's not up against it like he's in the hot seat, but there are expectations, right? And so look at the way we treated the Eagles and Sirianni when he picked two really bad coordinators and the season went awry, right? Again, I don't think Lions fans are about to revolt, but I do know some Lions fans in my life that believe the window's already shut. They have no chance at the Super Bowl. Everything's just gone to hell in a handbasket. Like this is what Lions fans are feeling right now. There's just a different level of pressure when you are perceived to be in a Super Bowl window. And make no mistake about it. Like we talk a lot about the ingredients you're cooking with. And I tell you all the time, I want a coach that can open the chop basket and make anything. He's got great ingredients. There is no question that the players on this team are really, really, really talented. So if they are not coordinated well, that falls on Dan Campbell's shoulders. If they are not coached well, that falls on Dan Campbell's shoulders. There are expectations with the Lions that fall on Dan Campbell's shoulders. So while I don't think that there's any world where Dan Campbell is sitting here suddenly on the hot seat, obviously, I do think when you start talking about pressure, when you are expected to be a Super Bowl caliber football team, the thought of starting 0-2, the city of Detroit will have some real questions for Dan Campbell, and at least Dan will be sort of fired up. So I think Dan, right now, they would probably both take the Pope's blessing. I just think Dan needs it a little bit more. What about what needs more? Go ahead.
Yeah, and to your point that I think a lot of Lions fans, myself included, I'm not a Lions fan, but I do have and share that same concern that maybe that magic did come from the hands of Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. Maybe the Lions and that motor that kept them running over the past couple of years and got them into the Super Bowl conversation was the coordinators, and Dan Campbell is just, an expert CEO and an expert, visionary and motivator for that team. And the X's and O's, the brain trust was the coordinator. So to your point, I think that Dan Campbell kind of wants to squash that narrative. If Ben Johnson and the Bears go out there and drop, 30 plus on this Lions team, I think there's going to be a lot of concern that it was much more the coordinators than it was, what remains in Detroit.
Which offense then needs a blessing more from the Pope? Are we talking about the Bears offense or the Lions offense? Because to me, I'll be honest, Caroline, like I look at the Lions offense, it's a Ferrari. Like I know there's some changes on the offensive line, but it's a Ferrari. They got the playmakers absolutely everywhere. And there's nothing worse than being in LA with somebody, like you're sitting at a restaurant and somebody's in a fancy sports car and they burn the clutch out because they have no idea how to drive it. Like that is what I feel like for this Lions offense if it just gets stuck the wheels are moving, but the car's not moving. You've got too many great pieces. And that's part of why Amon-Ra St. Brown said this summer, like, you guys are making a lot out of our coaches. These guys still know ball and we know how to play. Well, you're right, but you better show it quick. Like, Jared Goff certainly has all of the tools at his disposal, but you got to make sure that the person that's in charge of all of it's calling it the right way. So I think because of the simple tools that the Lions have, they need that blessing more.
Yeah. Whenever your biggest hurdle offensively is how do we feed all of our playmakers, that's a pretty good problem to have. Like, that's a pretty good conundrum to be in. But last week, we didn't see that Ferrari. That Ferrari looked like a clunker. Because last week on 22 attempts, they ran for 46 yards. Like, where is this explosive Detroit offense that we've all been, accustomed to seeing? Now, again, after seeing the Green Bay Packers defense last night, like, maybe the Packers defense is just that good. So I hear you, I understand you, and I agree with you 100% that this Lions offense has some dogs. But I will use my favorite, the kindest trash talk that I think exists in the world. And it is bless both of their sweet little hearts. Both of them need a blessing. Caleb Williams could use a blessing after the second half that he had against the Minnesota Vikings. This Lions offense that we saw week 1 against the Packers, they could use a blessing. I'm going to say the Bears need it more, but after what we saw week 1, they both need their sweet little hearts blessed.
You know what? I just need you to call me every day before I go work out and just say, bless your heart. Because nothing makes me rage more than when the Southernism, as both of us lived there a long time, the Southernism of bless your heart is just the most condescending up yours than anybody. Oh my God, it just drives me crazy. There we go.
It is. Whenever somebody says, "Oh, bless your heart," I'm like, you want to trash talk? Oh, you want to go there? It sounds very sweet and very kind. That's not a compliment.
Yeah, I'm going to cut you saying bless your heart off, and then after every set that I do in the gym, I'm just going to replay you saying bless your heart, just to remind me that I still need to two-leg day. Okay, we got to this conversation because of Peyton Manning. It should be mentioned that we have the Peyton Manning Bowl this weekend. We got Colts-Broncos, 2 former Peyton teams taking each other on. And it's funny because to me, this one, Caroline, is such a quarterback narrative maker. Because if we're being honest, after 1 week, Daniel Jones absolutely explosive in week 1 for the Colts, right? Like Daniel Jones, somebody that I was high on. I'll keep taking that victory lap until I can no longer take it. And the Colts played much better than expected. At the same time, Bo Nix, who I had questions about, taking my victory lap again, was bad. I mean, he was awful. Go back and watch that film. He just was not good enough. It was not the same Bo Nix we saw last year, I should say. If that trend continues, people are going to lose their minds one way or the other on these quarterbacks. You mentioned it earlier. Week 2 is a trend buster, trend maker sort of a week. But if Daniel Jones plays well and Bo Nix plays poorly, we are going to have 2 wild stories that nobody will be able to get enough of on Monday.
100%. And, in the last segment I talked about how the Giants-Cowboys game is a Missy Elliott game, because with no Deron Bland, I think that Russell Wilson is going to put that thing down, flip and reverse the narrative. I think that he's going to be able to go off. Then if that's the Missy Elliott game, I think this is the who game, because this is a who are you kind of game. Daniel Jones, who are you? Are you who we saw last week against the Miami Dolphins, who shocked to everybody? And I think everybody in their fantasy league flocked to the Yahoo Fantasy app to go pick up Daniel Jones off of their waiver wires? Or are you Daniel Jones, the Daniel Jones that we kind of all thought that you were? Fine, average, good, I guess, but not great. Not the guy that we saw week 1. And I think it's the same thing with the Broncos. I think we were all very encouraged about Bo Nix and his rookie season and this marriage of Sean Payton and Bo Nix. Oh, it's the perfect marriage, and we're going to see, the Broncos potentially make a run in the AFC West and make a run in the playoffs. Bo Nix looked like he didn't belong on an NFL field last week against the Titans. The Titans. Bo Nix stunk last week. I don't think that's who Bo Nix is, but who is Bo Nix? So I think it's like you said, a narrative busting game, or it can start to piece together some maybe concerning or encouraging, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, performances if we start to see repeats in week 2 of what we saw in week 1. So Daniel Jones, Bo Nix, who are you?
We've given you Missy Elliott games. We've given you Pope games, and now we've given you an
Yes.
Al game. Who? All right, I'll stop.
Woo!
We'll get back to all of the NFL action, plus a huge weekend in college football. We got a lot left to preview on Yahoo Sports Daily. But coming up, as we continue to break down what's happened for the Clippers, a staggering statement about what their punishment should be. We'll figure it out next on Yahoo Sports Daily. You may remember this tweet earlier this year. NBA All-Star 2026 is in Los Angeles, California. The 75th annual NBA All-Star Game will be played on Sunday, February 15th, at the Intuit Dome, the new home of the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, that is obviously earlier this year as we looked ahead to the All-Star Game on Yahoo Sports Daily. Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Why are we talking about that now? Well, are we sure that game is going to be played at the Intuit Dome? Look, we all understand that the Clippers investigation is going to be a long one. And I talked to a couple of people that I think are pretty well sourced across the NBA. And one thing that was stressed to me yesterday, Caroline, is that there will be no fast resolution to any of this. So however it's resolved, it's going to take time. But when you start to look at the controversy around the Clippers, Kawhi, and the possible circumvention of the salary cap as we continue to get more and more information, I guess my question is, how confident are we that the All-Star Game is actually going to be in LA at the Intuit Dome? Because there is precedent. Remember, with only a few months, the league moved the All-Star Game out of Charlotte over to New Orleans over what was then called the bathroom bill in 2016-17. So, we talk about that was over a 7-month period, I should say. We got about 5 months here. But there is another place in LA that this game can be played. Like, as much as this hurts Clippers fans to hear, it is easy to keep this game in Los Angeles and simply play it at Crypto. Play it at the home of the Lakers instead of the home of the Clippers. It doesn't require any change in travel. It doesn't require any modification in what teams are expecting to do. There's no extra expense to all of it. You just move it across town. So if I'm the NBA, I'm certainly looking, even if they're just still investigating, why not move it from the Intuit Dome?
Because it would feel like a big, fat middle finger to the Clippers, to Steve Ballmer, to Clipper fans everywhere. To not just move the All-Star Game, but to bring it to Crypto. Like, that is arch nemesis number one, the Los Angeles Lakers. So I think that's why that is why you wouldn't do it, is because you might feel like it is so disrespectful to this Clippers franchise. But you could also put that thing flip down and flip it and reverse it and say, well, it is so disrespectful of Steve Ballmer and the Clippers organization to commit one of the biggest no-nos in the NBA, and that is cap circumnavigation. which is exactly what Steve Ballmer and the Clippers are being investigated for. I do agree with you, though, that if this investigation is still ongoing, look, I don't really know if I need to do more investigation on my part. Pablo Torre has done some fabulous investigating and some fabulous reporting that if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And it looks a whole heck of a lot like a duck based off of what we know right now. But I do understand that the NBA has a much higher threshold than I do, at least in the court of public opinion. So if this investigation is still ongoing by the time All-Star rolls around or over the next coming months while we're still in a window where you can make some changes and some logistical adjustments to the All-Star game, I think you have to move it. Even if the investigation is still ongoing, even if there is a shred of doubt in anyone's minds that Steve Ballmer and the Clippers are guilty or not, I still think you have to move it because I think it's a bad look if you reward essentially this organization with an All-Star game in their arena while they're investigated for committing a big fat no-no.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's no harm in moving it if you're still investigating because you can always give them a future All-Star game to make up for it. You
Move it
can
back.
do it next year. It's not a big deal on that. To me, look, and you're right, there's a lot of investigation left to happen. If they have, in fact, worked their way around the salary cap, then there are three things that have to happen. Number one, the NBA needs to be wildly transparent about everything that they're investigating, everything they've found, and exactly how they get to the conclusion they get to. Whatever that conclusion may be. They need to be wildly transparent about the investigation because guess what? Nobody trusts the NBA. That's just a fact. Like we as a collective society, because of the actions of prior referees, everybody believes that the refs are fixed in the NBA, right? Like because we keep busting players that are gambling, people believe that outcomes are fixed. If you don't do anything about this transparently, then the public opinion will never trust you. So, number one, you must be transparent. Number two, I believe that the NBA should force Steve Ballmer to sell the Clippers if he's, in fact, circumvented the cap this way. And number three, I believe that they should void the contract of Kawhi Leonard and he should be suspended for at least a season. He is part of this. And I know there's a collective bargaining agreement. There is all sorts of legal loopholes you got to jump through. But the fact is, at the very least, a representative of Kawhi has been part of a plan, it looks like, to circumvent the salary cap system. If that is, in fact, the case, their investigation finds it, then you can't just punish the league. I think you also have to punish the player. He knows what the hell he's doing, and he's part of a collective bargaining agreement that says, hey, I will follow the rules. I think the only way that you stop every other team from starting their own shell companies and starting to just run money through wherever you want is if you punish the owner, you punish the team, you punish the player. You have to punish everybody, and I don't just mean money. Money means nothing to Steve Ballmer. It has to be far bigger than money. It has to be the sort of thing that keeps him up at night for years because he cannot believe this happened to him. If you do anything short of that, he'll continue to do whatever the hell he wants to, and other owners will follow suit. So I say make him sell the team, void the contract for Kawhi, suspend Kawhi for at least a year, and move the All-Star game. That is the sort of thing that says, hey, not on my watch. You're never going to work around these systems that your other owners have voted on, that other players in the union have voted on. Everybody else followed the rules. You simply can't. We are going to come down with the thunder of the gods.
I do understand that the NBA is not a court of law in the United States. That the preponderance of evidence in the NBA is probably different than in a court of law if you had a jury. I understand that. But it is pretty obvious to me, and it is pretty obvious, I think, to you, Fitz, and I think it's pretty obvious to a lot of sports fans, that this is what Steve Ballmer did. That Steve Ballmer created this funky faux fantasy company in order to pay Kawhi Leonard and to circumvent the NBA salary cap. It is pretty clear. It is pretty obvious. Do we have a direct wire transfer from Steve Ballmer to Kawhi Leonard? No, we don't, but we have something pretty close to that. So it's pretty obvious to me what the Clippers did. If the NBA feels like they need a direct wire transfer, more clear and more obvious evidence, I think you're kind of making a mockery of yourself as a league, because that's sending a message to every other owner in the league that, hey, if you just cover your steps like a little bit and there's not a direct, piece of evidence from owner to player, then you're good. You're Gucci. Like, you can pay anybody however you want. Not that I think that other owners absolutely will do that, but why wouldn't they? If Steve Ballmer gets away with this, I would. It's every competitive advantage that you can get. And these are very, very rich people that are trying to find any way to win. So why wouldn't they? So I think forcing him to sell the team feels as close to the death penalty as possible. But if you are Adam Silver and you are the NBA and you say that the cardinal sin in this league is cap circumvention, then why don't you hold anyone who could potentially be guilty of circumventing the cap to the highest standard of punishment? In order for Adam Silver to maintain the integrity of the NBA, I think these things like forcing Steve Ballmer to sell the team have to be in question. We have to hold people accountable if you want accountability and if you want integrity in the NBA.
There is, for me, one of the tent poles of society is precedent. And one of the most empowering things and dangerous things in society is precedent. Now, I don't care if we're talking about sports or non-sports. Every time something is done, it creates a precedent. And then what do we do moving forward? Which is why, look at what we're all talking about right now. We go back to the Timberwolves and their work with Joe Smith, and we say, well, there's precedent. 5 first-round draft picks, that's precedent. This is a precedent-setting moment. If you tell billionaires, and these franchises are with billions, if you tell billionaires that there's a way to do this and it's going to cost you a few years first-round picks, but you can go out and get the best free agent in the world, perfect. There is a moment for me where you have to look at the precedent, and no different than when corporations particularly do taxes. All right, the minute they find out, oh, well, this company can now write this off, we're all going to write this off. Hey, we can cut this expense, we're all going to cut this expense. If you tell a bunch of billionaires what they can do, they are going to do it, and it's going to be absolutely epic for the NBA moving forward in a negative way. All right, we'll get back to the NFL. We got plenty of football to preview over the course of the weekend, including a Super Bowl rematch that should have been on Sunday Night Football. I'm just saying. We'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Welcome back to hour number 2 of a Friday edition of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Want to take a second and thank everybody watching in YouTube right now. And also you can check us out, yahoosports.tv, across so many fast networks across the country too. We love all of you taking the time to watch. Keep the comments coming in. We will make sure that we respond to some of them throughout the course of what we do. In the meantime, we got 1 hour left, and we start that hour, Caroline, like we do every hour. 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
A little bit of news in the sports business world. I know we got football this weekend, but this could be an absolute monster if it does go through. Jessica Tunkel, who had the initial scoop for the Wall Street Journal, reported yesterday that Paramount Skydance, the parent company of CBS and others, is preparing a majority cash bid for the Warner Brothers Discovery that is backed by the Ellison family, according to people familiar with the situation. So a lot of that is, parent company names. Let me put this into layman's terms for you. CBS, the company owned by Paramount, and then of course Warner Brothers Discovery, which owns TNT. That means CBS and TNT would essentially merge. So in the sports world, this is what that entity would own if this sale does in fact go through. It would be the NFL, obviously, CBS, the entire NCAA tournament, CBS and TNT, Major League Baseball playoffs, half of the college football playoff, Big 10 and Big 12 football and basketball, NHL with half of the playoff rights. Of course, TNT owns a majority of, or not a majority, but part of the NHL, Champions League, and UFC. Did I get it all? You write that down? That would be an absolute monster and a behemoth if this deal does go through. Now, as a sports fan, it kind of makes my eyes light up because I'm thinking, well, right now, I have all these different streaming apps that I have to buy. I have to have YouTube TV and Peacock and so on and so forth. Well, this would condense, a lot of what I watch as a sports fan, a lot of what you would watch as a sports fan into one condensed app. It is important to point out, though, there have been, some lawmakers and some senators out there saying that this might not go through. This does have to go through the entire congressional process, that there might be too much of a monopoly here if this deal does go through. But if it does, this might potentially be a wonderful thing for sports fans that are sick and tired of scrolling through all of the different apps that are necessary to watch your favorite teams.
Yeah, Caroline, it raises a world It raises a world where we could end up with essentially the ESPN Fox app being one side of it, the Warner Brothers Paramount app here on the other side be the other portion. And then you have Peacock between those three, you would almost have, I think, basically all sports covered. So really crazy to think that we could get to that situation. And what does that mean for all the other TV products like Hulu and YouTube TV that you mentioned that, I'm a subscriber to, but the question is, do you still need those if you're getting your sports from literally these three apps, essentially putting it all in one place? Also, no report yet what they would charge us for these combined apps. That's the other part of it. Like in the beginning, it's fine, but let's all acknowledge that sports rights are not inexpensive. So the app to do them, like this is not going to be a $10 a month app that everybody says huzzah to. All right, let's.
But then you wouldn't need 10 different $10 apps. You would need one $150 app. So value, I guess.
I remember the first time I signed up for Hulu and it was $40, and I was like, "This is amazing, live TV for $40." And then you sign up 2 years later, all of a sudden it was $80, and then you move to YouTube and the price goes up and up and up. I'm sure just like they announced whatever the price of the ESPN Fox combined app is, I think $40 a month for the two of them combined for now. And then it'll be 60, and then it'll be 80, and then it'll be 100. Like this is the inevitability. And then
they'll all bundle, and it'll be cable.
It'll be cable. Yeah, you're welcome. Jinx. What's old is new again. That's the way it goes. All right, I'll get you my first point, and it's a big moment of the weekend. Canelo versus Crawford is the boxing match that has everybody talking about Netflix this weekend. 108 combined fights, 0 official knockdowns, a once-in-a-lifetime fight. I see it. I see the ad for it, and I'm here to tell you we don't care. For the majority of people, boxing is dead. And it's unfortunate. I grew up at my age, a Mike Tyson fan. And if you are my age, you had what we called Tyson friends. Okay, let's be honest for a second. That was the kid in school you didn't really care about. You weren't friends with him. You didn't want to hang out with him. But you knew his parents would get the pay-per-view and they would buy the Tyson fight. So like 2 months before Tyson fought, you'd become friends with this kid because you wanted to get the invite to go watch Tyson fight. It used to be a true moment. It used to be a stop moment for so many people of this is going to be epic. It just isn't anymore. And I don't think that there's a way to recreate it. We spend so much time worrying about whether or not Major League Baseball markets their young stars correctly. Okay, where are the young stars in boxing that the average person walking down the street have ever even heard of? They don't exist. You can look at UFC as part of the problem for boxing because UFC is more explosive. Because, frankly, we love the level of violence that comes from knowing that any one kick or punch over the course of it can absolutely knock somebody the you-know-what out. And on top of all of that, it paces faster. In this society where we want everything to be delivered as quickly as possible, UFC is just a faster product to watch than boxing will ever be. And then the other part of it is, who is your Tiger Woods? Let's lump it in with the way we talk about golf also. We sit here all the time and say golf has to find the next Tiger. Boxing never found the next Tyson. And I don't know that there are people coming up in the streets that can command that level of attention that choose to commit their life to boxing. Without these dynamic things that absolutely make people flock to a product, you can tell me how great it is. You can tell me why I should sit down and watch it. And it might set numbers for Netflix, certainly. But the growth of sports isn't about the diehards watching. It never is. Championship moments, the Super Bowl, the college football championship. These games are not for the diehards. The diehards are going to watch anyway. These games are the moments to bring casuals in and grow your sport. That's what's great about the World Series in October. You cannot be a baseball fan, but if you're sucked into what Dodgers-Yankees was last year, maybe it carries over to this season. The question is, what is that moment now? Because Canelo Crawford matters so much to boxing fans, and I understand that. And I'm not being disrespectful to the sport that you love, even though it feels like I am. I'm simply being a realist to how the growth of the sport is now being approached. The growth of boxing is dead. And because the growth of boxing is dead, what that tells us is that over the course of the next generation, when current boxing fans eventually fall off, the sport itself will become even more of a niche that even less people care about. This could be a great fight. The problem is if a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, does it make a sound? If this boxing match goes down and it's an all-timer, but casuals don't watch it, does it grow the sport? The answer is no. And that's why boxing, unfortunately, for people that love it, is just seeing its finest hour, and that hour has passed. All right, Caroline, let's get us to our number 1 point. And we got Sunday Night Football. And weirdly, Sunday Night Football, like, I know, I tell you, Sunday Night Football, and everybody says, oh my God, Chiefs, Eagles? Nope, not up in here. Not up in here. No, Sunday Night Football
We don't
today,
get anything
this weekend,
good.
We get the Falcons and the Vikings. And I'm going to be honest with you. Everybody wants to tell you, oh,
Falcons,
the Kirk
Vikings,
Cousins Bowl.
Falcons, Vikings. It is the Kirk Cousins Bowl.
Yeah, but that's like getting excited for, I don't know, shopping in an LL Bean catalog. It just feels like it's just not there for me. It's just not there.
Don't
Kirk Cousins Bowl?
disgrace LL Bean.
Well, I mean,
You're a white
I'm
man that lives
properly
in New
rating
England.
LL Bean.
You should love LL Bean.
I am properly rating LL Bean, like LL Bean and Eddie Bauer. Like that's where I feel like I am at this point. Like yeah, sure, I'm catalog shopping. Okay, so that's I'm just saying that there is a moment here where I want this to be exciting. It just, for me, isn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of love lost, I think, on this one between me and my approach to this game. It's just hard to be super jazzed up for this game when we have so many other better games in the slate. Like last night, what we saw on Thursday Night Football, way better matchup than what I think Falcons Vikings is going to be. Hello, we have a Super Bowl rematch happening earlier in the day. That is obviously a way more intriguing game than what we're getting. We get the Joe Flacco Bowl. Dare I say the Joe Flacco Bowl is more intriguing than the Kirk Cousins Bowl.
Is Joe Flacco elite? That should just be the only question for the entire weekend. It's the Joe Flacco Bowl. Go ahead, Caroline. Sorry.
Oh, no. That's going to get clipped off, Fitz, and you are about to get absolutely destroyed in your Menchies. Headline, Jason Fitz says Joe Flacco is an elite quarterback.
Hey, that ruled sports talk radio for like 3 years. All right, for like 3 years, it was, is Joe Flacco elite? Now we have to figure out, is Michael Penix Jr. or J.J. McCarthy elite? And like, I don't know, Caroline, this one's tough for me because we've seen a little bit of Penix and we've seen basically none of J.J. But I mean, if you ask me which one of these guys I trust more in this, maybe it's J.J. because I trust his coach so much more. We have never seen a Kevin O'Connell quarterback just fail. So I don't know, like if Michael Penix Jr. had been drafted by the Vikings, my answer to this might be Michael Penix Jr. But there are moments of Penix Jr. that have looked really good in his limited starting, but I just don't trust what's around him, the coaching around him. I don't trust any of that as much as I trust JJ.
It is, I've said in Kevin O'Connell we trust so many times on this show because I believe it deep down in my heart. And I think that, the rest of the football world trusts Kevin O'Connell so much because that's why Sam Darnold is making all that money in Seattle. Why we may have seen Daniel Jones pop off in week 1 because he graduated from the Kevin O'Connell School of Quarterbacking. So it is so easy to trust any quarterback that's in this Kevin O'Connell system. Who do I believe in more, though, at least right now? I'll make the argument for Michael Penix because I think Michael Penix can do more. You bring up the word elite. Obviously, we have a lot of time left to decide if either of these two quarterbacks are elite. But who do I think has a more likelihood of being elite? I'll go Michael Penix Jr. because I think he just has more skill. He can do more. I think in order to be categorized as a quote unquote elite quarterback, and again, I know, let me reiterate, we're way, way, way far away from that conversation with these two guys. But in order to even be, I think, a contender in that kind of conversation, you have to be a guy that can elevate your team around you. That's why we have Patrick Mahomes in that elite conversation. Why we have Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and that elite conversation, because on any given week, in any given moment, those quarterbacks can elevate anyone else around them. JJ McCarthy has not been asked to elevate anyone else around him. At least, and we'll go back to his time at Michigan. He had an absolute wagon of talent around him at Michigan. That what JJ McCarthy needed to do was take care of the football and get the ball in the hands of his playmakers. And then Michigan ended up winning a national championship that way. I trust Michael Penix Jr. more to be able to, or to get to the point that he can elevate everyone else around him, because he has more of a diverse and deep skill set.
I don't disagree with that. I will say this about Michael Penix Jr. His career passing stats, for everybody that's like, yeah, but we've seen Penix and he's in his second year. I just want to remind everybody, for his career, which includes what we saw last week, he's completed right at 60% of his passes for a total of 1,073 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. Like, there is not enough body of evidence there for me to turn around and say, superstar. Like, he played better in week 1 than he did at times during that time. But, like, I am hesitant to put a heaping amount of praise on Michael Penix Jr. over J.J. McCarthy, given the fact that their body of work is so different. We should point out, congratulations, huzzah, mazel tov to J.J. McCarthy. As he missed practice Thursday, he was at the hospital with his fiance. They welcomed their new baby boy. So congratulations to the McCarthy and his fiance for their new addition to the family. Far more important than anything that happens in football. So that's a beautiful thing. Crazy to think that J.J. McCarthy's old enough to have a kid. He looks like he's 8. Like, he looks like a kid. He's a kid's having kids.
That's kind of was my thought too. And I think that this is my sign that I'm getting old, is when, a guy who's in his second year in the NFL, I'm like, is he old enough to have a kid? Because he looks like a kid himself.
Just wait until you walk into a bar and you look over and you're like, that person is not of age. And then it's like, no, they're 26. That's inevitable. It happens in life. Okay, so who you got in this game?
It happens faster than you think.
Yeah, no, it does. Who do you got in this game? Falcons, Vikings, who you think?
Yeah, I am going to go Vikings, and it's because of what I just said, and it's because in Kevin O'Connell we trust. Look, does Michael Penix Jr. have the ability to make those, like, wow, pop off the page, pop off the tape kind of plays? Yes, and I think that Michael Penix Jr. very much so has the ability to make those kind of plays more than JJ McCarthy has. And that's taking nothing away from JJ McCarthy. There is no, if JJ McCarthy ends up being the kind of quarterback that, does what he needs to do, does his job, and is elevated by the players around him, and that gets them on deep runs in the playoffs, then great. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that have accomplished a lot and have had long careers in the NFL by doing exactly that. The term game manager, I think, has an icky connotation, but I don't think that's a bad thing in the slightest. If that's what JJ McCarthy ends up being, then great. I think he'll have a lovely career in the NFL. So while Michael Penix Jr. has the ability to make kind of more explosive plays, I just trust the Vikings more. And what we saw on Monday Night Football is the best example of that. That Kevin O'Connell has the ability to create the most perfect ecosystem to not mess things up and to put his young quarterback in the position to make plays to win games. Whereas I don't trust the Falcons as much to have that kind of stability.
Yeah, you are who you are until you aren't anymore. I don't trust the Falcons because they haven't given me any reason to trust them after one game. It's been one game, so I'll take the Vikings in this one. Let's go to the game that should have been Sunday Night Football. We have Chiefs at Eagles. I don't know. I feel like there's a panic meter here. To be very clear, I think the Eagles are going to win this football game. And with that being said, that means I think the Chiefs are weirdly going to drop to 0-2. And after the way it looked in week 1, I feel like there's going to be some panic after that if you're Kansas City and you find yourself sitting at 0-2.
It will be all out panic freaking out like chickens running around with their heads cut off. It will be all out panic in Kansas City because whenever you get so accustomed to greatness and near perfection, like Chiefs fans have, falling to 0-2, even though that doesn't derail the entirety of your season, the thought of going winless through 2 weeks is just incomprehensible to Chiefs fans. So yes, there will be panic, but no, I can't panic because I still believe in Patrick Mahomes. I still think that this Chiefs team, like it has a light at the end of the tunnel. Rashee Rice is going to come back. Xavier Worthy is not on IR. Xavier Worthy is going to come back. That what we saw week 1 and what we might see week 2, which is a Chiefs offense that's still trying to find its element of explosiveness against a really good Eagles defense that this time will have Jalen Carter. That's not the end of the world to me because I still know what this Chiefs team is capable of, and I still know that this Chiefs offense is going to get better when their 2, best receivers are coming back.
It is one of the difficulties when you finish in first place. 14 of the 17 games on your schedule for every team in a division match. The few games that are different are based on where you finished. So because the Chiefs finish in first, they have to take on all the other first place teams across the board that their schedule allows. It's not their fault that they're in this situation, but it makes it tough early on, right? Because if you're being honest, you look at it like they got to take on Baltimore. That's going to be a tough matchup. They got to take on Detroit. That's going to be a tough matchup over the next few weeks. They get the Eagles right now. That's going to be a tough matchup, and they're playing in the AFC West. So, yeah, I think there's a chance that there's utter panic for Kansas City because I think there's a real chance that they're sitting at 2-4 at some point in this season. And that's a reason we panic. The only thing I would remind everybody is that the AFC West will play largely the same schedule. There's just 3 games, right? So this gauntlet of the AFC West is going to be a gauntlet that impacts everybody. That being said, if it looks bad, and that's the biggest part of what the eye test matters for Kansas City now. Like, it shouldn't matter, but how many years in a row are we going to sit here and say, well, the offense just doesn't look right? Week 1, the defense didn't look right either. If the offense and defense both look like they're a step behind, if they look like they're closer to the Bengals in September than the Chiefs in September, there will be pure panic across the board. Taylor Swift getting any of the blame for it? Haters going to hate, or will they shake it off? I had to do it.
We just have a lovely musical theme on today's show. Crushed it. Of course she's getting blamed. She's getting blamed for everything. She's gotten blamed for everything. I think there's already people in Kansas City that are saying, Travis, call off the engagement. Don't do it. She's ruining this team, even though they've gotten to 2 Super Bowls and won 1 since they've started dating. So yeah, she's going to get blamed 100%. I think another thing that would concern me about the Chiefs is I expected after losing the Super Bowl in that fashion that they would come back and be pissed, that they've been thinking about getting embarrassed on football's largest stage for the last, 6 months. They didn't play with that kind of fiery passion in week 1 against the Chargers. So if they don't come out with that fiery, pissed off kind of passion, to your point, even if it comes in the form of a loss, how they look matters. And I think you'll start to get concerned if that Super Bowl isn't looming large over their heads and they don't play like they're trying to defend what they feel like is theirs.
There is nothing in this matchup that screams dark horse, but there is a dark horse in the NFC. We've struggled to find it. We've looked for it. I think maybe we've identified a dark horse candidate for you in the NFC. We'll tell you about it next. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We're hanging out with you on Yahoo Sports Daily. This is probably the most complete team I've been on. That's what Kyler Murray said about the Arizona Cardinals this year about a month ago. And now we sit here going into week 2, and I'm starting to wonder if maybe we're overlooking a dark horse in the NFC. Yahoo Sports Daily, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, and Caroline, let's just be honest with the world. We were having our production meeting yesterday, and we were going through games that we wanted to talk about. And there was a moment where I laughed when the suggestion was made. We talk about the Panthers and Cardinals. What do we think in that game? It's two brands that aren't particularly sexy in the NFL, but you see it there on the bottom of the screen.
Not really particularly sexy. They're not.
Okay,
they're just
that's
not
fair.
Sexy.
They're like they're me twerking. Nobody wants to see it. But that being said, you see it there on the screen. The Cardinals are 1-0. Now, it wasn't a pretty 1-0 over the Saints. I get that. But they are 1-0. And I sit here and look at the Panthers, who I don't think are a particularly good football team either. And I'm looking at this saying, my God, 6.5-point favorite. The Cardinals, at least in Vegas' eyes, and I think they're right, are about to go 2-0 in a division where the 49ers are just ravaged with injuries, where the Rams, they've got a quarterback that may have a back issue, hopefully doesn't, but we'll see what that looks like. The Seahawks, we talked about earlier, might not be the team that we thought. We don't know after 1 week. Like, are the Cardinals poised to be a dark horse in the NFC?
I don't like it. I don't like it at all. No. Look, I think that we're going to have this conversation about the Arizona Cardinals over the next couple of weeks of like, oh, are they the team nobody's talking about? Because this weekend they have the Panthers. And then next week they go on the road to the 49ers. And remember, Brock Purdy will be out for that game. Mac Jones will be the starter. And then they play the Seahawks. We'll see if the Seahawks can figure things out by what is that, week 4? And then they host the Titans. The Titans absolutely stink. That's a long road trip for the Tennessee Titans. So I think by the time it's week 5, I mean, like there's a realistic possibility, maybe even a probability that the Cardinals are at the very least 4-1 or maybe even 5-0. And they're the sexy team, that the hot team. Kyler Murray's a big time name that we start to talk about the Cardinals. Like, should we talk about them more? The 49ers are injured. What does Matthew Stafford's health look like and availability look like over the next couple of weeks? Could they make a run in the division? And then they go on a run they go to Indianapolis. Like, we'll see if Daniel Jones can continue the trajectory he was on after week 1. And then they have the Packers, and then they go to the Cowboys. And they have the Bucks, they have the Rams, they have the Texans that I think are going to be more of what they were in CJ Stroud's rookie season than what they were last year if they continue to stay healthy. They go to the Bengals at the end of the season. A dome, warm weather team going to Cincinnati in the month of December. Yeah, no thanks. So I think the beginning of the Cardinal schedule is incredibly favorable, and they're going to be really fun to talk about because it's that team that maybe came out of nowhere. It's going to be this year's version of, the Texans a couple of years ago or the Commanders last year. I don't think that with this schedule and the teams that they play in the middle and back half of the schedule, I don't think they're going to be able to continue that trend of the quote-unquote dark horse. I just can't buy into it. Show me, and then I can believe it.
It's probably, there's a narrative that the Cardinals fall off at the end of the year. Every year Kyler Murray gets hurt. I'm not sure how much that narrative is false, honestly. And one of the things a buddy of mine said over the summer that is stuck in my head a little bit is so often in the NFL, oversimplification, but so often the team with the better quarterback wins. And I don't know if that's always true, but when you just laid out their schedule for the first 5 weeks, Kyler Murray, who is not an elite quarterback, in my opinion, is going to be the better quarterback in many of these matchups. As you get further down the road into the later portion of the season, that's just not the case. So I think you're right. Like, sometimes context matters, and something in this show that we try to pride ourselves on and always will is the context. I think if you spend a lot of time around college football too, who you play matters, right? Like, who you play and when you play them they're real things. And we need to talk about it more in the NFL because I think it's equally powerful to the context of why a team is good or bad. I do believe that there are some foundational pieces here that have talent, right? That's the one thing that they have a talented roster. They have some talented pieces. They have guys that can play. I think they can be a good football team. I just don't think they can be a really good football team. And the hard part right now in the NFC is I know we're only 1 week in, but the road to the wild card in the NFC feels really difficult to me. I think there are several teams that are going to position themselves in that 9 or 10 win range. So if you're going to get to a wild card, I think you got to get to 10 wins. And that's tough to do. If the 49ers turn out to be healthy, that becomes even tougher. the easiest path for the Cardinals, weirdly, is everybody else just sort of falls apart in the division. The Rams, I think, are the outlier to the concept of fall apart. I have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
But I can see, especially if they start 5-0, 4-1, to your point, that really lays out a path where all they have to do the rest of the way is win 6 more games, and they're going to have a record that puts them in the playoff conversation. I don't think this is, like I said earlier in the week, that is something I strongly believe. Got to ask yourself, do you want your team to be a good team or a playoff team? I'm not sure the Cardinals end up this year being a very good team, but I do think they end up this year being a playoff record team. They're going to be right on the fringe of making it into the playoffs.
I mean, when you break it down that way, maybe they are the NFC's dark horse, because it does kind of feel like a very crowded room in the NFC. That I think if you just look at the NFC North, for example, the Packers are a playoff team. I think that the Lions, we'll see, but I think that the Lions still have the ability to be a playoff team. I think the Vikings could be a playoff team. The Bucs are going to win that division, so they're going to be a playoff team. I think the 49ers, if they're healthy, they're a playoff team. The Rams are a playoff team. How many did I just name? Like 8? I mean, there's just not enough spots for teams that I think could be playoff teams. But I just said a lot of ifs. If the 49ers are healthy, if the Lions figure things out, if the Vikings can, continue to get enough out of JJ McCarthy to find ways to win football games, that's a lot of ifs. And not all of those ifs are going to come to fruition. So that does leave room for a team like the Arizona Cardinals. Let's say they go 4-1 in the first 5 weeks. Well, they can beat the Jags. I mean, I think they can beat the Falcons. I think that they can beat 49ers aren't healthy. They can beat the 49ers twice. I mean, there are at least enough games here. And if they can steal a game that they're not going to be favored in here or there, then yeah, you're looking at 9 or 10 wins. Ew.
Yeah, see?
Gross.
We're getting to 9 wins. We're getting the Cardinals to 9 wins.
I don't like it.
He's not the only quarterback in this matchup.
I love that for the Cardinals, but it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's another quarterback playing in this game, Bryce Young. Is there anything in your mind that can happen now? Like, what can Bryce do to simply get himself to the level of Kyler Murray in his career?
I think at this point, from the sample size that we have of Bryce Young, it's less of what can he do and more so what can the Panthers do for him. Because I don't view Bryce Young as one of those guys that can overcome bad ownership and a bad franchise. We saw Patrick Mahomes do it. The Hunt family doesn't like to spend money, but Patrick Mahomes comes in, he's an elite quarterback, bam, all of a sudden you're in the Super Bowl every single year. Joe Burrow did that in Cincinnati. Again, the Brown family, a family that does not like to spend very much money, and in year 2 under Joe Burrow, they find themselves in the Super Bowl. Bryce Young is not that kind of guy. That's okay. Not a lot of quarterbacks are that special to be able to overcome, a bad ecosystem around them. So what has to happen? He has to have a good ecosystem around him. Can they get enough players around him? Can they protect Bryce Young? Can they keep him upright? Can they please, for the love of God, figure out the defense? Can you please stop dropping the football? Bryce Young has to do it himself, right? He can't put the ball in harm's way. He did that too many times against the Jags in week 1. But what can the Panthers put around him for him to be able to be that kind of quote unquote game manager type of quarterback?
That's the problem. Like, look, to me, Bryce Young is closer to becoming Zach Wilson than he is to becoming Kyler Murray. At this point, I'd be more surprised.
Kyler Murray, no disrespect to Kyler Murray, but that's kind of a low bar to ask for the number 1 overall pick.
I would be more surprised to see Bryce Young get a second contract at any real level in the NFL than I would to see Bryce Young end up as a backup. And again, I'm not putting this on Bryce. I just think from the outset, the Panthers did the wrong things. Like they put the wrong players around him. They didn't help him in his rookie year with the offensive line. They didn't help him with some of the coaching changes they've made. They didn't help him with the on the field, off the field. They didn't help him with the benching stuff. They've just never had a concrete plan on development. And it seems to me like they've spent the entire time throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And that's just not a way to develop a quarterback. So again, this is why I say all the time, if you're begging to have the first overall pick so that you can get a quarterback, what you should really be doing is begging for the infrastructure to be built within your organization to actually develop that quarterback. If you're not doing it, all you're going to do is ruin a kid's career and ruin your franchise. And when you get it wrong the way they got it wrong with Bryce Young, it sets the kid back, it sets the franchise back. I think Carolina is going to have to do an entire reset, and that includes a reset at the quarterback position. I hope I'm wrong. I root for players to succeed. I just don't think that Bryce Young is going to be a starter in the NFL in the next couple of years. There are two great wide receivers in this matchup. Everybody will have their eye on. Speaking of wide receivers, that makes me think fantasy football. In case you guys love fantasy football as much as I do, be sure to hang out on FFL Fantasy Football Live. That's me hosting it every Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, all the way to 1 p.m. We are there with you all the way up to kickoff with some of the best fantasy experts in all the land. We get you everything you need for an hour and a half, including the latest, greatest lineup changes. So make sure you're hanging out with us every Sunday. We'll be right here on yahoosports.tv Sunday at 11:30. All right, we got more games to preview. We got more fun to get into. Texas A&M, Notre Dame. The matchup of the weekend, who has more pressure? We'll figure it out next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Notre Dame is a 7-point favorite at home versus Texas A&M this Saturday per at BetMGM. It's a big number for a ranked matchup that means a lot to both of these teams. It's Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. And Caroline, 7's beefy for me. I'm going to be honest. I think this game is incredibly close when you look at these two teams on paper. And I understand that there's a lot of pressure to get into. 7 points feels like a big number to me.
It really does feel like a big number because I don't know where Notre Dame is going to find the offense to be able to cover a 7-point spread. When we talk about offensive lines, like great offensive lines, I think Notre Dame has to be the first, team, not necessarily this edition of Notre Dame, but Notre Dame as a whole. They always have great offensive linemen. This year, though, at least what we saw in week 1 against Miami, that is not what we saw a historical Notre Dame elite offensive line kind of performance. And you've got a Texas A&M defensive front coached by Mike Elko, who is a defensive-minded guy. You have Cassius Howell and Scooby Williams, guys that have the ability to eat. And there's enough depth in this Texas A&M defensive front that if you sell out to stop one, well, 2 or 3 more can get you. So I don't know where Notre Dame is going to be able to find the offense to cover the 7-point spread. All of that being said, I think Notre Dame finds a way to win this football game at home. Texas A&M is atrocious on the road. Last year, they were 2-2 on the road, including a loss to a brutal Auburn team that didn't even make a bowl game. In 2023 and 2022, they were 0-4 on the road. In 2021, they were 1-4. In the last 4 seasons, they are 3-13 on the road. I understand 3 of those seasons were under Jimbo Fisher. He's no longer there. I get it. It's a different coaching staff, but still, it's hard for me to trust Texas A&M on the road. But overall, I think that I think that that this game will be won and lost, and maybe Texas A&M's path to victory here is on the defensive front.
Well, and I go back to last year, right? We thought the same thing going into last year, that defensive front would be a beast. And I'll give Notre Dame's offensive line, they really credit. They did a good job of handling that defensive front. But there's no Riley Leonard here. And C.J. Carr is so young. You are taking such a risk of a mistake. Like, part of what made Riley really good in this game last year was he didn't force it. He didn't take what wasn't there, and he ran the ball really well. Like, we look at that total rushing number, and I don't remember. It was around 160 yards, 170 yards that they ran for against A&M, but almost 70 of those came from Riley Leonard, right? Like, so quarterback production at that level, I don't want to sleep on the fact that Riley Leonard, part of the reason that he went to Notre Dame was because he was supposed to be a guy that could get them to a national championship because he could beat you with the legs and his arms and he wouldn't make a lot of mistakes. That almost worked for Notre Dame, right? Like, so it's just putting a lot on my young quarterback. But you're right. I think one of the big factors here is he's at home. And there's so much comfort that comes from being at home and being on that grass and knowing the little things like where that play clock is and how to manage the crowd and all of these things. It puts C.J. Stroud in a really good situation. Also, Marcus Freeman, who you see right there, if we have a knock on Marcus Freeman, it's that sometimes Notre Dame loses focus against bad opponents. But if I want to turn around and give the positive to Marcus Freeman, it's that when they are taking on like teams, I keep saying this year, like the hill I'm going to die on is football games are one of the margins. Like teams, Marcus Freeman wins. Like, he has his team ready for, A versus A. Sometimes when they're taking on a bad team, it feels like they sleepwalk through it and they find a way to lose. But when they're taking on like talented teams, similar teams in talent level, Marcus Freeman wins. So I'm torn on this game because I'm with you. I think Notre Dame wins it. But I also feel like I'm giving a lot of credit to Marcus Freeman, which is disguising some of my discomfort with C.J. Carr being the quarterback in this situation.
I know. And every time I feel like I find a conclusion of I feel really good about who I think is going to win this game, I dissect something else and I'm like, oh, wait, never mind. Wait, no, back to the drawing board. Because Notre Dame's at home. Notre Dame's coming off of a bye. Why anyone schedules a bye in week 2 is frankly beyond me, but Notre Dame is coming off of a bye. They've been thinking about that loss to Miami now for 2 weeks. Whereas over the last 2 weeks, Texas A&M has kind of struggled to pull away from inferior opponents. So Texas A&M, against UTSA, they allowed 177 rushing yards, not to the team, but to UTSA's running back, Robert Henry Jr. He looked like Derrick Henry Jr. when they played Texas A&M in week 1. 16 rushes, 177 yards, 2 touchdowns, including a 75-yard touchdown run that he essentially went untouched. Against that Texas A&M defense, Notre Dame didn't run the ball very well and very effectively and even very much against Miami. They only ran the ball 28 times for 93 yards. That's not Notre Dame's formula for victory. So I have to think, okay, well, is Notre Dame, do they just not trust their young running backs very much? Or not even young. Jeremiah Love is one of the best running backs in all of college football. So why didn't they run the ball more against Miami? If they're able to get the ground game going early against a Texas A&M run defense that was porous at best against UT San Antonio, no disrespect to UT San Antonio, they're not Notre Dame. So if they're able to get the run game going early, I think they're able to pick apart this defense. But also, I think about Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. Marcel Reed has looked really, really good at times. He's had flashes. He can run the ball very well. But, but which Marcel Reed are we going to get? This, I feel like, is kind of a Marcel Reed, who are you kind of game. We've seen some good from Marcel Reed. He's been able to come off the bench and be incredibly electric. But when he's been the starter, he hasn't been as electric. So who is Marcel Reed? We're not talking about Marcel Reed, the quarterback at Texas A&M, very much, because I think all of us are just kind of waiting with bated breath to figure out who is he? Is he in the upper echelon of quarterbacks in the SEC? Or is he just kind of an inconsistent guy who you don't really know what you're going to get from each week? That's kind of what he's been, at least for, the short amount of time that we've been able to see Marcel Reed going back to the end of last season.
So for my money in this game, Notre Dame's got to have it, and they got to have it more because their schedule doesn't have anything left on it. Like, if you just start looking at Notre Dame, the playoff team, after this game, They have Purdue, Arkansas, Boise State. I mean, I listed off here. They don't have a single ranked team left on the schedule after Saturday. So think about that. If Notre Dame loses this game to A&M, particularly if they lose it ugly, they never have another shot the rest of the season to prove who they are. That, to me, becomes really problematic when we start talking about how good some of these other teams could be across the country and how spread out it looks like the playoffs could be this year. So for me, Notre Dame's got to have this game because they don't have the runway left after this game to show the committee anything that shows that they belong in the college football playoff.
I hear you, because it feels like falling to 0-2 to start the season is just brutal following, a trip to the national championship game. But if Notre Dame wins out, which it's just what you laid out, like it sounds like they absolutely can win out and go 10-2. You think a 10-2 Notre Dame team is getting left out of the playoff? I don't. I do not. I think that this game is more important for Texas A&M for two reasons. One being just the overarching feeling around this program, because I think Texas A&M is such a wild conundrum. They have so much money, they have so much talent, they have such great facilities, and they can't get past this certain hump. So it feels like if Texas A&M is able to take down Notre Dame in South Bend, that's kind of maybe a sign, maybe a really good feeling that, okay, maybe Texas A&M is starting to get over that hump and can win some of these big time, big national games. But Texas A&M's schedule does not leave a whole lot to be desired. They go to LSU, they go to Missouri, they go to Arkansas. That's a weird game. Texas A&M and Arkansas always ends up being a weird game. They take on Jackson Arnold and Auburn next week. Auburn's a ranked football team right now, and Auburn and Jackson Arnold look pretty good against a Baylor team that just beat SMU, who was a playoff team last season. So Texas A&M's schedule doesn't have a whole lot of gimmies, but if Texas A&M, let's say they go 10-2 or 9-3 on the season with a win against Notre Dame in South Bend, you're building a really good resume to potentially find themselves in the college football playoff.
If Notre Dame loses this game, you'll want to listen to the show next week because Caroline and I will have our annual argument. I do think a 10-2 Notre Dame team misses the college football playoff. There we go.
No way.
We'll have that argument next week.
We do have this argument every year. We did it last year. We'll do it again this year. 10-2 Notre Dame is not getting left out. Mark my words.
Now I'm rooting for this. This is what's going to happen. Texas A&M is going to win the game. Notre Dame's going to lose. Neither of them are going to make the college football playoff. Look at that. Drama is going to happen everywhere. All right, we'll keep breaking down what you need to know, including what to expect from my favorite team apparently this year. I'm all in on the Colts for some strange reason. We'll get you some picks coming up next on Yahoo Sports Daily. We're a big dumper show. Like, look, we're openly
You're a
positioning for the
big
dumper.
dumper show.
Yeah, we're big,
huge, big dumper fans. Yeah. Huge. Maybe we need to see Belichick and Kraft in the ring. Put the gloves on. That would be the most interesting thing. An actual physical boxing match between those two.
Do you know how much money they could raise if they did a boxing event for charity?
Oh.
Take my money.
It's going to outdo the Super Bowl.
The first thing he mentioned to me was like, man, you ran against me all those years, ran hard. Why don't you run for me? And I was like, man, you know what? I'm all in.
The NBA All-Star Game in 2026 is in LA. It is at Intuit Dome, and you can be rest assured that Steve Ballmer wants to be the face of that NBA All-Star Game.
If Billie Jean wants to do anything with me ever, forevermore, I'm always going to say yes.
Ever seen that meme? And it's like a mother who's driving a car and she's looking behind at her child in the back seat saying, why can't you just be normal? And then the kid's like getting up out of his car seat and he's like, ah! That's what I have to say about this game.
The public is almost always going to bet on the over, with the exception last weekend where they loved the under in the Steelers-Jets game. We saw how that worked out.
You cannot be serious!
I need to take that with me, and the next time I'm out in public and somebody's got their cell phone on speakerphone. In fact, if you're at the gym and you've got this on speakerphone, shame on you. Don't turn it off. Just turn the volume down, okay? Like, put your headphones in. That's good. I don't care what you say.
Oh my gosh, that's
good.
incredible. Fitz, you need to go get a perm today. As soon as you possibly can. I have eaten so much crow on Daniel Jones.
I think everybody was proven wrong, so I don't think you're alone there. Don't feel bad.
Not Fitz.
I am the only person in America that predicted great things for Daniel Jones. We're going to do the Thursday Thirst Trap.
Not the one you think, you sickos. Why does Dabo kind of look like the Tiger King? Since when is John Harbaugh from the Jersey Shore?
This is in response to a question about whether or not Arch was battling some injury because he looked uncomfortable. And Sark reminded everybody that he doesn't take pictures of the reporters when they use the bathroom. I don't know exactly what the expectation was. I kind of want the reporters to now post bathroom selfies.
Like, is he implying that Arch, during that throw, was actively pooping in his pants? Was that a poop? Is he pooping? Is he farting in his pants?
Cal Riley becoming the AL Swing King. Is that pig, Caroline Fenton, is it cleared for takeoff?
Fitz, I would like you to say his name correctly. It is Big Dumper.
Big Dumper. The Big Dumper.
The
is that
big
Dumper cleared?
Say it with your chest.
Is the Big Dumper cleared for takeoff? I am.
Well, is he,
shooketh.
Fitz? Is the Big Dumper cleared for takeoff? We discussed.
The big. Okay. I don't know how to get through this. All I do know is that's a little bit of the best of. Every Friday, we like to get to some of our best ofs. Got to get a shout out to everybody on the crew, Josh, Hutton, Doug, Mike. It takes a whole group of people to put this together so that we can actually do this show. So we really appreciate everybody hanging out with us. We appreciate the work the guys put into this to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch. So glorious work by our staff for putting that together. And also the Photoshop work on this show has become elite. I really want my face put on one of those. Like, I'm just going to use that as my new profile pic. Me as a thirst trap. Okay. So we got a lot to get into. She's Caroline Fenton. 100%. Wait, catfishing. Are you implying that I don't already have those glorious abs, Caroline Fenton? Is that what you're implying?
No. Okay. I would say if you Photoshop yourself on that bod, then you are selling yourself short. The anti-catfish, if you will. You know what? Put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it.
I got up early. I did not skip leg day today. Okay, let's get to some picks. We are going to have some fun on this show every single Friday with a pick six. All right, so we're going to take a mix of games from the NFL and from college football. We're going to make some picks. We're going to trash talk and see how it goes. And then most importantly, if we're right, we're going to let you know that we were right because we were right. And if we're wrong, we're going to delete all evidence of it and never acknowledge it. So let's take a look at some of the games we'll go through. And we will start with Bears-Lions, okay? We're going to pick a mix of the games, starting with Bears-Lions. Look, this one's pretty easy for me. The Lions are going to win big. I think what we learned last night in Thursday Night Football is that the Lions are going to be fine. It's just the Packers are that damn good. The Bears are not that damn good. They're fine. They're going to be fine over the course of the year. I still believe that the Bears will be good by the end of the year. But in this game, I think the Lions win this game by double digits, Caroline.
Okay, so I am going to try and be different. Okay, so that way, whenever I'm wrong, I can say,
She's
"Oh, I was just trying
qualifying
to
it.
be different." But if I'm right, I can clip it off and say, "I called it. I told you so." Okay, so I'm gonna be different here. Caleb Williams learns from all of his mistakes that he committed on Monday Night Football. He starts to watch the film more and more. Ben Johnson is an offensive genius. They go through all of his missed throws, the gimmies that he didn't get. He builds upon the big time throws that he made. I didn't forget that throw to Roma Dunze in the first quarter. That the Bears offense starts to click after getting absolutely just crushed. It was a crushing loss to the Vikings in week 1. They figure things out. Maybe the Lions are, in fact, taking that step back that we thought that they were going to take. That Ben Johnson wants to prove himself as a legitimate, bona fide head coach in this league. He learns from his tactical mistakes that he made in week 1. The Bears have a prove it, big time, monumental win in week 2 against the Lions.
I like that. I like the bold take.
How'd I
We'll
do?
go to a little. I'll let you have the bold take. I don't love that you qualified it because now you can be like, I didn't know. Okay, but that's fine. That's fine. Let's go to a college football matchup. We talked about it last segment. Texas A&M, Notre Dame. I said I really want Texas A&M to win, so they both missed the college football playoff and mass chaos ensues. But I'll take Notre Dame to win this football game. I think this is the sort of ugly football game that sets college football back a decade. And we're sitting here saying, why did we just watch this slop? I don't think either of these teams look clean, but I think Notre Dame, with their back against the wall, knowing that everything is on the line, I think they get the win here.
This is a Jim Harbaugh game. It's gross. It's low scoring. They run the football. It is mucky up the middle. I think that Notre Dame wins a close one. I'll take A&M to cover, but Notre Dame to win.
All right, what about Broncos Colts? Let's go to that one. Who you got in the Broncos and the Colts, Caroline?
I think that Daniel Jones gets brought back down to earth. I think that this is kind of a reset game, that the Broncos aren't as bad as they were in week 1. I don't think the Colts are as good as they were in week 1. So I think the Broncos get a bounce back win.
I am too pot committed, as they like to say in poker, to walk it back now. So even though the Broncos have the best defense in the NFL this year, maybe the Packers have a charge for that. Nope. Daniel Jones continues to triumph simply so that I can take victory laps on this show repeatedly and only get more obnoxious about my hot take on Daniel Jones being comeback player of the year and the Colts winning the division. That continues. Daniel Jones has a big, sneaky big game. Couple of rushing touchdowns in this one. That's my tantalizing prediction. The Colts get a win. The Colts go to 2-0, and everybody starts freaking out about Indianapolis. How do you like that one? What about Tennessee versus Georgia in the college football landscape?
I will be in the house for this one, so I am rooting just for the ultimate glory for the home team. Tennessee beats Georgia for the first time since 2016. Josh Heupel gets his first win over Kirby Smart. I mean, Gunnar Stockton has been iffy over the past couple of weeks. This Tennessee defense is going to swarm. As long as Tennessee plays clean football, I think they get the upset. They get the win at home. Happy birthday, Dylan. Tennessee wins.
Oh, man, now I feel really bad because I've got several friends that are going to be at this game. They're all really excited for it. Dylan's excited for it. They'll be less excited for it in the fourth quarter when Georgia's up by 2 scores. Kirby Smart and Georgia are being overlooked for being one of, if not the best team in the country right now. I still have trust issues with Gunnar. I think that's a fair thing to say. We've seen very little to change that so far, but man, this is it. Like, Georgia's been really vanilla and holding back on everything until they get into this game. I trust the coach that always has the advantage, and that's Kirby. So I'll take Georgia in this one. I'll go back to the NFL. What should have been the Sunday night matchup, the game of the week, Philadelphia, Kansas City. Who you got?
I am taking the Chiefs to defend home field against the Eagles. I know the Eagles are the Eagles. And I know the Chiefs looked like a shell of themselves in week 1 against the Chargers, but this is the Chiefs at Arrowhead. They're pissed off coming off of a loss, and they were kind of embarrassed. At the last 2 games they've played, they've been embarrassed. So I think the Chiefs are going to get a bounce back win over the Eagles. It is going to be loud at Arrowhead Stadium. I'll take the Chiefs with a very narrow win. I think it could come down to a turnover, a missed field goal, something funky in order to will the Chiefs to victory, Fitzy.
You're wrong. Fly, Eagles, fly. I'm just going to flap my arms. Fly, Eagles, fly. Oh, Philly's going to win this game. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. It's the end of a Friday show. The Eagles are going to fly through this one. Chiefs go to 0-2. By the way, the Chiefs are still going to win the AFC West. Everything's going to be fine, Kansas City. Don't freak out. You're just going to start 0-2. The most important game to this show over the course of the weekend, Florida at number 3 LSU. Who you got, Caroline?
Taking my Tigers. I'm taking LSU to win this one, but I am taking Florida to cover. Even though they just lost to USF, even though on paper LSU should blow Florida out of the water, this game's always weird. This rivalry is funky for a reason, so I'm going to take Florida to cover. LSU wins it, though.
You see her picks right there. You are staggeringly right. Like, you're going to be happy in the second half of this game. I said it before. I'll say it again. I think LSU's up by double digits at halftime. I think going into the fourth quarter, they're up by 3 scores. This isn't even a game. LSU absolutely destroys them. So we agree on the majority of our picks, although there are a couple little spicy ones in there. And I will remind everybody, Monday Night Football is a doubleheader, so fear not. I'll be on one on Tuesday, sleep deprived, but
late night doubleheader.
Yeah, it's gonna be a late night for this show. So we're gonna rejoice for Caroline on Monday, and then good God willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll celebrate for me on Tuesday. That's the way things go. We've had an amazing week, as we always have. We will be back here Monday morning to react to every ounce of college football and NFL action from the course of the weekend. On behalf of everybody that works their tails off, thank you so much for hanging out with Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Have a safe weekend. See you Monday morning.